Can't really believe that we're talking about the final round of British GT for 2024 already, but sadly it is. It's finals day here at Brands Hatch. Championships on the line. GT3 and GT4. They're going to be decided later on this afternoon over a 2-hour race around the Grand Prix circuit at Brands Hatch. The grid was decided yesterday in the qualifying session where you amalgamate the two drivers' times for that combined time for the grid. This warm-up session gives everybody a chance to make sure the cars are okay after yesterday, just get a little bit more mileage in, maybe practice pit stops if needs be. Warm-up is very much in people's minds. It is a chilly day, that is for certain. And we'll see how this warm-up session pans out, because one or two of the teams yesterday were in difficulties. David Addison and Joe Osborne are trackside. Bryn Lucas is in the pit lane with one of those drivers who had problems yesterday. Adam Smalley's McLaren ground to a halt in Sean Balve's hands on its outlap. They therefore couldn't qualify at all. Bryn, that's put them on the back foot for today, third in the championship.
This has very much put them on the back foot, unfortunately. They'll be starting from the back of the grid. Adam, it was a crank sensor that went at a really wrong moment. They can never go at a good moment, but at least you get down to shake it out and see what's going on.
Yeah, massive thank you to everyone at Garage 59. They've sorted it. It wasn't their fault, wasn't McLaren's fault. It's just part of racing. And who doesn't love a last to first challenge today? So, yeah, we'll see how we get on.
Unfortunately, it's just around a 15-minute fix, they say. They have to remove the rear corner, and that would have put you out anyway because it being a combined qualifier.
Yeah, it's going to be a challenge. So starting last, it's not going to be easy, especially around here. It's a unique circuit. It's not very wide. But, Sean's shown what he's capable, shown what he's capable of. He's been quick. He's been mega at race start. So, if you can have another start like he did at Spa, then you never know what can happen.
You never know, I wish you the very best of luck. But just on this one with the race ahead, Adam, I've spoken to a number of teams. Good luck, Adam, thanks very much. Spoken to a number of teams. They are expecting rain at 2:45 this afternoon, which will be right after the driver swap. So there's still all to play for, and it's not completely out of the question that Garage 59 and Smalley and Balve could climb the order.
It's one to watch, certainly. Bryn, thanks for now. Let you go and get warm in the pit lane. Cars pouring out on circuit. Yeah, that's Joe going to throw another spanner in the works, isn't it? If once you've got the second driver in theory, the pro, admittedly for GT3 terms, but a wet road completely changes things, because it might be you have to come into the pits yet again for a tyre change.
Yeah, and the setups will be compromised as well that way. We've had a very wet season, haven't we? We know the car on overall pole, the RJN bunkum driven car, has not done a dry race in British GT. Yes, they've missed a few rounds, but this is the first time in the dry, and that's why they're saying they're fastest, because they've got a very quick car in these conditions. So that would definitely throw a spanner in the works. And another thing to add to that is the nature of the GP circuit here. It's basically two circuits, Brands Hatch. You have the Indy track, the start of the lap, sector 1, and then the GP loop, and they're used so differently. The GP track is probably used 10, 12 times a year. The Indy track 200 times a year. So the grip of the surface is wildly different. So it's very difficult for the drivers. The orange JMH GT3 McLaren stops in the pit lane. Doesn't look too bad, but that is nowhere near where their garage is situated. So I assume they've left the garage and then they've got a problem on pit exit, and the team are trying to fit it there. So it'd be interesting to see if Bryn can find out the issue of that McLaren.
And the fact that the championship pit marshal is having a word suggests that there's unhappiness as to what was being done on the pit apron. That's the car on pole position there. Alex Buncombe, who was very, very chipper after getting pole yesterday, and Josh Cahill, who we've not really seen much of in British GT. He's been a rather peripatetic racer, from motorbikes to one-make saloons in Germany to a one-off outing in the British Touring Car Championship, you name it, but has found a happy home in GT racing these days. The Collards are doing a practice pit stop, and the car has to be empty while refuelling takes place, and this is why you practice them, because Dad went a bit previous there. Rob and Ricky
after John
are the two drivers.
Yeah, quirk of British GT is the pit stop. It's quite different to any other championship. You can't have a driver in the car or near the car while it's refueling. And Barwell are using the dump churns there. So you can use a fuel rig, which is just a long hose off a 200 litre drum. You can see one in the background for Barwell, but they're using dump churns. So Rob saw the first dump churn come off and went, it's my time to go. But I think they're going to be doing 4 dump churns, so he's got to wait. And the team's saying it's after John. To me, that looks like a John. So he comes off, and then Rob, oh no, there's another John there, sorry. So then they're going to have to go, and they've got to be behind that white line. And this is why you practice. Because if that was a race, that would have been a penalty and some time lost. So lots still going on in the pit lane.
So it's not a John Doe, it's a John Go instead for Rob Collard, who then rushes round, and he and Ricky complete the driver change. The outgoing driver will help the belts for the incoming driver in many cases. It's interesting as well. Some teams do it so that the two drivers work as a combination. We've seen other teams, driver gets out, just walks away, lets the mechanics do it. But there's always that sort of extra bit of inclusion, isn't there? And you might be able to pass on a little bit more information as you're strapping the driver in, like, you know, be careful of the green Mercedes, or mind that bit of oil at Paddock Hill Bend, or whatever it might be. Clutch bearing problem on that number 77 McLaren, we understand, the Morgan Tilbrook and Marcus Klassen car. That's why the ground to a halt at the end of the pit lane. Not a good start to the day.
Yeah, and that's a big change in the McLaren car. I know well. That's got to be engine out to access that. So yeah, the Orange JMH guys are going to have a very busy time. 1:30 for the race this afternoon, but the cars will be leaving pit lane just after 1 o'clock. So that literally couldn't be tighter, whether that's plausible or not. That will be all hands in that garage trying to get that clutch release bearing. Annoyingly, as the driver, you only use the clutch to pull away and stop. Once you're on track, it is no clutch, just up and down the gears on the paddles, but it's obviously engaged to a point where the clutch is slipping, I assume, and it's just a no-go to go on track with that car.
Now, this is the car that is second in the championship. It is being hustled along at the moment through the Grand Prix part of the circuit. Alex Martin, Sandy Mitchell are the two drivers for number 78. Sandy Mitchell, Lamborghini factory peddler at the wheel. He is probably your benchmark British GT Championship driver these days, with due deference to Maxi Goetz, because Sandy knows the tracks that little bit better. But he's had an outstanding season. He and Alex Martin have taken 3 wins, and we said it yesterday, but it's worth repeating. Alex Martin, first year at this level, has looked really impressive in a way that, with respect to him, he didn't in Porsches or touring cars.
Yeah, I agree with every single statement you've just you made there, and I think Sandy Mitchell hovering through the traffic, lovely. You can see he's very decisive, but he's not aggressive, and that's why I use hover, because he places the car in the right point and then acts. I think what you've got to remember as well, Alex Martin here in shot, they had a DNF at Silverstone through no fault of their own, taken out by Mark Ratcliffe, who was spinning off on the exit of Copse in tricky conditions, and the delta there behind their sister car is because of that DNF. So they're really on the back foot through no fault of their own, going back on board. This is the Indy part I'm talking about. Then suddenly we cut left through Sterling. Surtees. It was an S there, wasn't there? Sorry, it's still early for me. I'm waking up. And then you suddenly go onto the GP loop, and it's a different world.
Indeed. That's a McLaren in the pits, Joe. That's the number 2 pole-sitting car, Josh Cahill and Alex Buncombe for Bob Neville's team. And you made the point earlier on, really came alive yesterday and looked so good across both elements of qualifying. The Collards are back out. Now that car, number 31, the Team Parker Racing Mercedes, that's in GT4. That is a car fighting for the championship. Also, it has less time to serve in the pits. It has 15 seconds because of being on the podium at Donington Park, but Pro-Ams serve less time than the silver entries. They have to spend 24 seconds come what may in the pit lane. So its pit stop will be shorter. That's going to help.
Yep, so 9 seconds less than those Pro-Am ones. Quick math, I can see you're impressed. And that is a lot of time, because Dawson in the car currently has been so fast. Fastest Pro-Am in his qualifying, but he was 4th overall. He had 5 silver drivers behind him in qualifying. So I think he's got a good chance of being within 9 seconds of those championship contenders, and potentially giving Seb Morris the lead as they leave the pit stop halfway through the race later on. Here's another championship contender. They really snatched defeat from the Georgia victory last year, didn't they? So they're here, they know what they need to do. Jack Brown was half the lineup last year. Meakin drafted into that car. They've been strong all year. A good illustration of GT3 and GT4 differences there. The bigger 720 McLaren brother against the more nimble Artura GT4, sandwiched between the Race Lab car and the Optimum cars, the RGN car. Sides through on this back straight out of Surtees.
So number 90 McLaren is 2nd in GT4. That's the car that's 3rd in GT3 in the championship. Sean Balfe bringing it back into the pit lane. This car is 4th in GT4. Mark Warren, who is vying with Charles Dawson for most impressive GT4 AM of the season. But in fairness to him, Mark was so good in Porsche Sprint Challenge last year, you kind of expected him to be good in this, and he has been good. That team has gone through the season without actually winning GT4, but they've had a couple of second places and have looked very, very good. This is the car that leads GT4 in the championship. Mikey Porter and Jamie Day for SRO Motorsports. Driver change done. This session, just to make the point, doesn't affect the grid unless you cop a penalty that would give you a grid drop. Time's already set yesterday, but it's just about making sure the cars are good. And you've seen the problems already for the number 67 McLaren team with that clutch drama. Here in super slow-mo, number 18 sparking its way into Stirling's as the splitter grinds the ground. That's the Maxi Goetz and Kevin Say Mercedes. Max Goetz, factory Mercedes driver. Kevin Say at the wheel of the car, the man from Macau. And he rides it out wide over the curb into the little trench that's developing behind the curbing there at Stirling's. And you don't want to fight the car back onto the road. You sort of need to let the car do its own thing. But by the same token, you don't want to be on the grass for too long. Yeah,
and I think the trench, like you said about there, is getting deeper as well as the cars use and abuse it. Such a narrow track here, you need to maximise every bit of width. I wonder, a 2-hour race, are we going to dig that trench out more and more, where you could see the bottom of the Mercedes just starting to kiss the curb, and it used to be you bottom out there and go in the wall on the left. That'd be interesting to see if that develops. Sean Balfe getting back behind the line. Garage 59 was sent smallly out for the last 5 minutes. DTO Ginetta very quick with Aston Miller. Looked like it was going to be an easy pole position because he was a second clear when he did his lap on his first flyer, but then everyone else improved and Jack Brown did pip him just under a 10th there, so he qualified second, and Tomlinson was fourth. So they're strong. They're going to be looking for a good result after the DNF they suffered at Donington Park last time out.
It's a nice looking car, that Ginetta. It works, doesn't it? The G56 as a shape, and it's been a competitive car this year. And DTO as a team actually have risen to the occasion and done a good job.
Yeah, ran the McLaren Artura last year, switched to Ginetta. Obviously a bit of a factory-based effort because of Tomlinson, and the car definitely looks good. And again, that bump into clearways we saw yesterday in qualifying, it seems to ride it really well. So the actual vehicle dynamics of that car, really, really good, and it's just been strong across the board. It doesn't seem to have a particular strength, straight line speed, braking or cornering, but it's in the mix everywhere, and I think that is, as a driver, the perfect scenario for your BOP vehicle. And another interesting one this year coming in, the Mahiki Lotus, Gordy Much behind the wheel, pole position in his qualifying session yesterday. Very, very quick lap records, and not done in qualifying, but that is the fastest time we've ever had from a GT4 car, doing European GT4 as well, getting quicker and quicker. Like I said yesterday, I've driven this car, done a little bit of development with the guys, and there is huge potential with the team, with the car. They're still in their first year, and it's easy to forget the people there race against the Optimums, winning races across the world. It's a big task to us just to get straight on the speed, but they are definitely getting there quickly.
And helping with 2 cars and 2 programs, because you're bringing back more data, you're learning at sort of double the rate. It's a tough season because for GT4 teams there's a lot of travelling involved if you do British and the European series, but it's a nice looking car, and it's good to have the Lotus brand back on the grid, back in motorsport. If you go back to the very early days of British GT, you had the late Hugh Chamberlain running Lotus Esprits, and it's good to have the Lotus brand back into the championship as number 20 then accelerates now in the hands of Gordy Much, out of that left-hander of Stirling's, down now towards Clearways and Clark Curve. The second car has got Stephen Lake at the wheel of it, but it's in the pit lane at the moment. Fastest in GT4 is Mikey Porter. Just explain, Joe, the purpose of this session we've been saying is to make sure all is well with the cars, but in terms of a Pro-Am combination of drivers, how do you divvy it up? Is this more important for the Pro to go out and make sure the car is good, or is it more important that the Am gets a bit more mileage?
It depends where you're on your weekend plan. If everything's going well, then you give the Am nearly all of the time, and as the Pro, you would jump in at the end, make sure the pit stop's okay, and just give it one final check. If it's going badly and the setup's poor, then the Pro will take the majority, and will probably be doing, like, once past the pits, come in, setup change, go again, and just try to get the car in that window. The interesting bit here in the warm-up as a Pro before, when we've been in a good place, sometimes I don't get in the car at all, but the first time you then get in the car on Sunday is as you leave the pits midway through the race, which almost feels a little bit illegal. You're like, this shouldn't really be allowed. Imagine doing a sport, not warming up straight into it. That's how it kind of felt. But yeah, we've seen some damage done, didn't we, at the last round at Donington. The Greystone Mercedes GT3 crashed in warm-up, and that put them on the back foot of the race. So there is a lot of negatives that can come from a session that gives you no points and no grid positions.
Indeed, and in the past, sometimes you've seen drivers skip the warm-up for fear of having a problem and not getting into the race. That car in a new livery is the Toyota Supra in British Army colours. The McLarens through from myriad teams behind, including Garage 59's number 59 entry, the Duckham's colours brought by Adam Smalley, last year's Carrera Cup GB champion. He is now at the wheel of the car, and it is full fastest. It's a McLaren 1-2, Tom Gamble in 27, ahead of Alex Buncombe in number 2, that's currently in the pit lane. And then the third quickest car in the warm-up is Rob Collard at the moment, behind the wheel of the family Barwell-run Lamborghini. The clock is ticking on down. We've got less than a lap time now left in the session.
Yeah, it's great riding on board with Smalley there. You can just see how bumpy the track is out of the back. Just keep an eye on his hands. You can see he's having to get the car in there, out to that trench we were talking about. We're about to come into the last corner. You can see that Supra in front of us in the British Army colours. Great to see that car back as well after missing a couple of rounds from Speedwax. He's going to go to the left, all the way around the outside, onto the pit straight. So you're going to grab 6th, then it's going to be hard on the brakes. Should be down to 4th gear here, a couple of gears, see the big number on the dash, roll the car in, pick the speed up, see if it bottoms out. Sounded pretty good. That's always the hard bit for the cars. The cars compress so much that actually the suspension gives up and you're straight into the floor. And again, the car can give you a bit of a wild ride. Nice rotation out of there into Graham Hill. Hook the apex curb up. You can see the Barwell Lamborghini in front as well. So you can start to get a flow of how your car's going to be. Smalley missing qualifying has really used his warm-up to warm up himself.
Indeed, and there with an oil leak, number 69. Lotus, quite a lot of oil, we understand, has been coming out of that car. So trouble for the second of the Ahiki Racing Lotuses. You could argue better to have it now than in the race, but it's not something they want to happen at all. Flag is out, session's at an end. And Stephen Lake it was, wasn't it, that brought the Lotus into the pit lane, and there are worried faces. But they've got until, 1:30, and if the car has to start from the pit lane rather than go to the grid and buy themselves another 5 or 10 minutes, then they'll do that.
Yeah, exactly, and it's a great project, that Lotus. One Lotus car's involved, obviously, with RML, who have built many a fast race car in the past, so they'll have all the expertise they need to get that car fitted, and yeah, better for it to happen in warm-up than at the start of the race.
That's another fan-friendly and much-travelled car, the Mustang, another team, Academy Motorsport, doing European GT4 as well, the GT4 European Series. 61 brought into the pit lane towards the end of the session, and Eric Evans, reigning GT4 champion, hasn't had quite the same success this year with this new sort of Evo Mustang, which, whether it's a GT4 or a GT3 Ford, just sounds brilliant. No argument about it. And the two cars came within a whisker of winning at Hockenheim in the European Series, which would have been quite something.
Yeah, if you're a motorsport fan, I would implore you to come to a British GT race just to listen to that car trackside. Got lots of good tracks in the UK, but probably here and Alton Park are the ones you can get so close to listening to it. You can see the Mahiki mechanic stood on the engine there. Looks like there's a lot of oil everywhere. The mechanic there with the white bottle, got brake cleaner in that, trying to clean up. Nathan Harrison looking from behind, just trying to see exactly where the oil's coming from at the moment.
Well, we'll leave them to try and sort the problem. We look at the order at the end of warm-up. As I say, it doesn't affect the grid, but this is how they conclude, with Tom Gamble doing the gun time on a 1:23.871 ahead of Marcus Clutton and then Adam Smalley. Josh Cagill and Alex Buncombe 4th ahead of Hugo Cook and Sasha Kakad, whose car was in the gravel yesterday, so they didn't get a qualifying time either. Kevin Say 6th with Max Goetz, then the Collards ahead of Mark Smith and Martin Plowman. The Nearys, another dad and lad combination, ahead of Callum McLeod and Mike Price. Newcomer to GT3, Tom Wood. He'll have his GT3 debut later on. That car 11th in the times. The best in GT4 is the Lotus of Gordy Much. Then he did the time ahead of the Zach Meakin and Jack Brown, McLaren, Michael O'Brien and Ben Tusting for the Toyota Gazoo Racing UK squad, 3rd in the times. 30 cars we have for this last round of British GT. 1 or 2 missing, but even so, it's a really competitive entry. And we've got some new drivers coming in as well. So that then, the order at the end of the warm-up session. I have to say, I'm not much warmer, but the warm-up is done, and we look forward then to the championship showdown coming up later on in the day. 1:30, we will be getting the cars off the line. We'll be on air before that with all the build-up. We'll see you later on to find out who will be the 2024 British GT champion.